Hey there drone fans, Rick here again from Drone Valley. In today's video, I'll do a closer look at both of the controller options you have available for the brand new Mni3 Pro drone. I'll talk about the Gen 2 controller, which a lot of you are familiar with. I'll also talk about the brand new integrated controller. I'll show you all the connections and indicators you'll need to understand in order to use these products, and also give you a little bit of my opinion on the differences between them and which one might be appropriate for you. Now, I have an entire clip I'm working on that compares the different packages available for the Mni3 Pro, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's get into the closer look. With the new Mni3 Pro, you've got a choice between two different controllers, the integrated version that has a really nice screen built into the front of it, and what I like to call the Gen 2 controller, which was first introduced on the Air 2, the Air 2S, and the Mini 2. And this one you'll need to add a phone or a tablet to the top of it, and I'll describe the connections and indicators on both of these, and I'll start with the Gen 2 controller. So this controller's tried and true. It's been out in the field for quite some time. One of my favorite updates to the DJI product line because they've really put everything right where you need it. The joysticks fall right under your thumbs, really comfortable hold. It's got a little rubber grips on the back, so when you have it in your hands, it's not going to slip out. Now on the front of the controller, you've got a few different buttons and indicators, and I'll start with the power button right here. So to turn the unit on, just like with all DJI products, you'll tap it once and then hold it again. It'll actually come on. And to turn it off, right now it's looking for the aircraft, so let me turn it off. You'll hold it again, it'll strobe down and go off. In the center, you've got the control for how fast the unit's going to fly. You can be in cine mode, normal mode in the middle, or sport mode. Sport mode is the fastest, obviously. You're going to probably fly in normal mode most, and cine puts it in sort of a, I don't know, like a tripod mode where it moves very, very slowly. It's a very cinematic movement, so it slows down all the reactions to your joysticks when you're in cine mode. When I fly, I typically use sport mode to get out to the target I'd like to film, and then I'll put it in normal mode or cine mode to actually capture the footage I need of that target. To the left is probably the most important button on any remote control from DJI because it serves two functions. It's the return to home button, so if you lose sight of the drone or you panic and you can't find it, you can actually hold this for a couple of seconds. That'll instigate the return to home where the drone will elevate to the height that you've set in the software settings. It'll turn around, fly back to where it took off, and land pretty much where it took off. The second function this has is the pause. And pause is really important because if you're flying, and again, if you're excited, you may be heading for something, you may try to correct for that, but if you tap that button, the drone will stop in mid-flight, and it'll actually back up a little bit to protect the drone from crashing into whatever it is you're heading for. So always remember to keep your thumbs near that button in case you're flying and need to instigate that pause button. Above that are two more buttons here, a function button that can be set in the software to do different things like point the camera down, make video adjustments. You can set that in the software settings to about 7 or 8 different things. I usually set that for camera straight down. So if I'm filming and maybe I'm coming down on top of some trees, I'll tap that button and look down below me so I can see what I'm coming down on top of. This button switches between video and pictures. So if you're filming video, you can tap that, and you want to take a nice picture, just tap that and snap the button up top and take the picture. On the top, you'll find a few more controls. This button here starts and stops the recording when you're in video mode. It also takes the picture when you're in picture mode. So this button and this button work pretty much in conjunction. You can decide what mode you're in and then use this button to start video or take pictures. Over here is the gimbal control. That allows you to put the gimbal up and down like this when you're flying. And again, you can make adjustments in the software to smooth that out. I've got a whole separate clip where I'm going to talk about that. On the very top of the unit is where the phone or tablet mounts. Now, this expands pretty far, so you can fit all the newer phones in there, but it doesn't expand far enough to fit a tablet in there. You'll need to add a tablet adapter to put anything bigger on the top, but I do like the way that actually expands. The antennas are no longer on the back, so the Gen 1 controllers had antennas that flipped up. The antennas in this one are right here in this unit, which is perfect because they're going to be parallel and pointing towards your drone, so they're giving you the best possible positioning of those antennas. Down underneath, you'll find the cable right here that you'll use to connect up to your device. Now, this end of it has a connection on it that actually connects to your device, your phone, your tablet. Right now, I've got the Apple one in. There are 2 more of these cables included with the kit, one for a micro USB connection and one for a USB-C connection. And to change it, you'll basically unplug it here and plug in whatever cable you need to mate up with your phone or your tablet. This slot over here is where you'll curl this around and put it back in when you're done for flying, and that keeps that connector nice and clean. It also makes it really easy to close this up so nothing's dangling out the back of it. On the bottom of the unit, you'll find a USB-C port right there, and that's used for charging the controller. And what's interesting about the controller is you can actually charge it from a power bank when you're flying. A lot of people don't know that, and if you've turned on the function where you're charging your phone from the internal battery in the controller, you can go through, electrons pretty quickly. So a lot of times when I'm flying late in the day, I'm running low on power on my controller, I'll plug a battery bank in right there and actually charge it while I'm flying. here are the two slots where you can store your joysticks as well. On the back of the unit, there's a ventilation slot right there. This is running an OcuSync technology. That transmitter gets a little bit warm, so having a vent back there to evacuate that heat is a really good idea. That's pretty much it for the controller. It's a nice little package, really easy to use, and it works again with most larger phones. And tablets again are an issue, but you can get a tablet extender for the top. Your other option is the brand new integrated controller, which was released with the DJI Mni3 Pro. And I think this is a pretty cool product because the display is actually embedded right in the controller, which eliminates a lot of the hassles of worrying about things like, did I bring my phone? And is my phone fully charged? Did I bring the right cable? Is the cable working? Geez, did I download the firmware? And will it work with the controller? Because a lot of things can go wrong when you're flying a drone. And the last thing you want to have happen is to get out on location an hour or two away from your home, power up the drone, power up the controller, and find out you can't fly. You've just wasted all that time. So having a controller like this just keeps things so simple because I'll charge the controller, I'll charge the batteries, and I can head out and fly and not have to worry about any of that. Now the display is 6 inches corner to corner, which a lot of people asked about comparing it to other things. Here's an iPhone 13 Max. That's 6.5 inches corner to corner. So I think it's plenty big. A lot of people were asking about the brightness as well, and I don't actually have an official specification on that, but I've compared it to other phones I'm using and tablets and other smart controllers, and I'm going to peg it at full brightness somewhere between 700 nits and 850 nits. Now, I'm sure they're going to come out with an official specification, but that's the number I'm putting on it right now, and in my opinion, that's plenty bright to fly this under most conditions. Now, people are going to ask, can I fly it in bright sunlight with it all the way cranked up? And the honest truth is, there isn't a display out there that you can fly in bright sunlight with it cranked all the way up, because even the ones that are 1,000 nits, like the smart controllers that they've released already, or some of the phones that are 1,500 nits, brightness is only a small part of what affects how well you can see it in bright sunlight. It has to be bright, but the glare has to be overcome as well, and that's really difficult to do. And the thing you have to remember is brighter displays, 1,000 nits, 1,500 nits, drink more electrons from the internal battery. So having a brighter display will give you more brightness and will help a little bit overcoming the glare, but it's also drinking more electrons, which means you can use the controller less. The other thing is those brighter displays really heat up, and if you've got bright sunlight and a hot display, you're headed for trouble there. So I think the balancing act they've done of putting a 6-inch display in with about 700, 800 nits in it gives you everything you need in a controller to be able to use it under most conditions. And if it's a really bright sunny day, even with my controllers that go to 1,000 nits, I'm finding a little bit of shade to get into to actually see the controller. The other question was, could they have made it bigger? They certainly could have made it bigger, but again, remember the Mni3 Pro was designed to be small and portable. If I've got a bigger display, I've got a bigger controller, it's already pretty big. So I think the balancing act between the brightness, the size, and how it fits in the controller was pretty well done. All right, so the display itself, I'll show you how that comes on in a minute, but above it are some similar controls. That's the power button. You'll tap it and hold it to turn the unit on. When you hold it, it'll strobe through the lights up top and it'll come on and start searching for the drone. In the center, you've got your flight control switch. Again, Cine, normal, and sport mode. I fly in normal mode most days. I'll fly in sport mode to get to a target, and I'll put it in Cine mode if I'm trying to get that buttery smooth video footage up there in the air. Here's the most important button on your controller. I've said that before and I'll say it again. If you're new to flying, this button is your friend because it's your return to home button. So if you've had the drone out in the field and you've lost sight of it or you're panicking, tap that and hold it. You'll hear the controller start to beep, and that's instigating return to home on the drone. The drone will elevate to the height you have set in the software, turn around to head to home, and land pretty much where you took off. So it's your get out of jail free card. It's also a pause button, so it's a double function button. If you're flying, and heaven forbid you're heading for a building or you're heading for a tree, and you panic, because it happens, hit that pause button. It'll stop the drone in midair. It'll freeze it where it is. Even if you're pulling the joysticks, it won't move. Take a breath, and then regroup, and then fly it back home. So the pause button is really important. I always keep my thumbs between the joysticks and here if I have to hit that pause button, because there are times where I'm flying, I'm trying to get that perfect shot, and I realize, oh my gosh, I'm heading for a tree, I'll hit the pause button. All right, so on the top of the unit, you've got a couple of additional controls. Unlike the Gen 2 controller, where it was one button to start and stop your video and take a picture, you have separate buttons here. The nice thing is, these will switch between those two functions. So if you're in picture mode, tap that, it'll move to video mode. If you want to take a picture, tap that, it'll move to picture mode. If you soft press this, it'll focus, and then pull it again or tap it again, it'll actually take the picture. Above that are two thumb wheels. This one controls the gimbal movement up and down. This one controls the actual zooming. So you can zoom in on certain settings in your video and your pictures using this button. And I like that a lot because it gives me really good control over both the gimbal movements and the focusing and actually the zooming right here. So you've got a lot of cinematic control. And again, these fall right under your fingers. So you can take your picture, start your video. You can move the camera up and down. You can zoom in and out. And you've got controls here. Now a lot of people use thumbs. I use thumbs when I'm flying, so I'm not blocking the screen. If you're a pincher, like a lot of people out there like to pinch because you're FPV guys, you can still do this and not block the screen. So I think they've done a great job there. On the rear of the unit, you'll find a place to hide the joysticks right there. So if you pop them off, you can pop them in there. Again, I don't take the joysticks off because I'm a bit of a fumble fingers and I'll drop them. And invariably, I'll drop them in deep grass and spend an hour trying to find them. But if you want to store the joysticks, they pop in right there. A nice heat sink right there to keep the OcuSync O3 technology inside cool. It also helps to cool off the display, so great job there. You have two special function buttons here, C1 and C2. Both of these are programmable through the software. I've set one to bring the camera down. I've set the other one to bring me into the video settings in case I want to change the resolution or the brightness or anything else. So you can set those any way you like. On the bottom, I found two interesting slots right here. I should say shafts right here that they're threaded. I don't know what they're for. I've got some speculative ideas of what I think they're going to use those for, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But I'm going to find a way to use those for some of the attachments that we're working on. We're working on some 3D printed stuff, and I'm going to use those as attachments points to the unit. On the bottom, you've got two more threaded shafts right there, and those are for lanyard kits, so you can get a lanyard kit that has eyelets here with a lanyard that'll hang. I always recommend using a lanyard kit with anything you're flying because it's going to protect your controller. If you're flying, you can actually drop it, it'll hang around your neck, and if you got to do something with your hands, they're free. So get a lanyard kit. USB-C connection right there for charging. You can use a charger that's 30 watts or higher. If you've got a quick charger, even better, it'll fast charge the unit. Plug the USB-C port in there. And then there are two things underneath this little cover, and I'll show you those because it gets really interesting. So you've got a micro SD card slot right there. That's where you'll put the memory card. Why would you need a memory card for the controller? Well, you can queue up the videos here. You can actually cache the videos here to that memory card in case you want to have a low resolution version of it, which is 1080p coming back from the drone, and you can use that for social media. It's also great, heaven forbid you crash your drone, you can review the last couple of minutes of where the drone was when it came down and maybe help you find it. Now what's really interesting is this USB-C port right here. It's labeled host port. That's a USB-C port that really isn't well defined yet. Now I have a couple of ideas what that's going to be used for. For starters, you can actually charge from that port. I don't know why you'd want to do that because you have the display built in, but if you have to charge something, you can drain power from the internal batteries with the USB-C cable from there to that device. Again, I wouldn't recommend that because you're going to get about 4 or 5 hours of use out of the batteries for flying, depending on your flying characteristics. But if you need to charge something in a hurry, that's a good way to do it. What I think that's going to be used for, and I've tested this already, it's not implemented, but I'm running beta firmware on here, is this may very well deliver video because USB-C can deliver video. So maybe it's going to give me video out. It also is going to be used for some regions in the world are experimenting with a 4G dongle for connection to the internet. And I think that's what these two slots are for back here. I would bet that the dongle would mount here with a short cable that plugs in right there as the host port, because host port means the controller is taking charge of whatever peripheral is plugged in there, and that would be a great place to put the 4G dongle with a connector there. Now in the States, that's not available, and from my understanding, it's a regulatory issue. If the regulatory issues are overcome, we may see a 4G dongle for this as well. I don't think that's going to be used between the controller and the drone. I think that's going to be used between the controller and the internet for you to download maps when you're out there in the field. So we'll have to see as that progresses, but I promise you I'm testing any version of firmware I get that's been updated to see if that host port has more functionality built into it. All right, let's take a look at the display. I'll turn that on real quick because I want to show you one other thing that I totally missed. Now, normally when you buy a smart controller, it'll boot up into Android, a base operating system, and you'll have to instigate the DJI Fly application to get it to start to fly. And then you have a choice between different aircraft. A lot of people have asked, will this work with the Mavic 3? Will it work with the Air 2S, the Air 2, the Mini 2? At this point, it's only working with the Mini 3, and that's because I have beta firmware. Now, I expect that when it boots up, it'll probably come up to an aircraft management screen where I can scroll across to any other drone that I control. I don't think there's any issue with this controlling a Mini 2 and the Air 2S, because again, O3's in there. I'm not sure if it's going to do the Mavic 3, because the Mavic 3 has its own smart controller, but again, I'll be testing this a lot as these products come out. But what's interesting about this is that you can't boot into Android. The way you get into Android to adjust the brightness, and I totally missed this, so thank you, Stuart, for helping me on that one, is you tap the top of the screen right there, and then you can pull down once you tap that screen. So once I tap that, It's not pulling down. There we go. Okay. You can pull it down, and there are your adjustments. Now, there's not a lot of adjustments in here. You've got Wi-Fi connection. You can turn on Bluetooth. You can put it in airplane mode. You can mute the notifications. And then you've got a record screen button and a screenshot button, as well as volume and brightness down the bottom. Now I've got it cranked all the way up right now, but you can adjust the brightness as needed. So that's pretty cool that you can get into those controls. And that's really all I had to show you about this. I'm going to do a complete walkthrough of the software settings in another video because I didn't want to make this 45 minutes, but that's the basis of the smart controller, or I should say the integrated controller. I like it an awful lot, and comparing the two side by side, it is slightly larger than the Gen 2 controller. But having that controller with the screen built in for me is just an all-in-one solution that makes things a whole lot easier. And I'm doing another clip where I compare the two choices because there are pros and cons between these, and I want to point those out. I'm not saying this isn't one you'd want to use because this is really beneficial for a lot of reasons, and this one's beneficial for a lot of reasons. So I'll try and give you the pros and cons of these two in a separate clip. I hope that show and tell was helpful in pointing out the benefits that both of these controllers provide for the new DJI Mni 3 drone. And I know it's a really personal choice, so if you're somebody that likes to fly with a larger tablet, or you'd like to use your phone as your display device, the original Gen 2 RC-N1 controller is probably right for you. If instead you're a new flyer or you're looking for a simpler solution where everything is contained in one controller, you can go with the DJI Pro controller, and that way you charge it, charge your batteries, and head out and start flying. The third option is to use an RC-N1 controller from the original Air 2S or the Mini 2. Those will work fine with this new Mini 3 Pro as well. I think the key thing to remember here is that DJI has given you a pretty wide choice between which package makes sense for you. Now, I've tried to answer a lot of the questions we've received on the controller and the drone in these clips, but if there's something I've missed, please drop that in the comments below, and I promise to get back to you as quickly as I can. I also have a lot more clips I'm working on that I'll be posting on the channel over the next week or two that cover every aspect of the drone, the controllers, the software. I'll take it out and do a bunch of test flying, so you'll get a lot of really good information on the drone. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit that little icon down there in the corner and join the Drone Valley family because we have so much cool content coming, you're not going to want to miss any of it. So thanks an awful lot for watching, and until next time, happy flying.